Here are 8 things that bad companies say to their employees, and be very cautious because this could be signs of a toxic workplace. So if you recognize any of these 8 signs while you are interviewing or even while you've started working at a company, just be wary that it could be time for you to find a new employer. And if you want more career advice just like this, make sure you click subscribe down below and share it with a friend if you think it's helpful. Now, as a quick disclaimer, if you see any of these signs at work, it doesn't mean that your employer is always bad or that this is always a toxic workplace. These are just some key signs that I've seen in my experience and some of my clients have told me about when they're experiencing really tough times at work. So if you're seeing any of these, just be very cautious before accepting your job offer and do a little bit more due diligence before signing on the dotted line. So the very first thing that bad companies tend to tell their employees is that they pay for performance, but they don't actually back it up when it comes time to your annual bonus and times for your annual compensation increases. I myself have unfortunately been a part of this where I was working at a company who basically expected me to work 80 to 100 hours a week, and my annual bonus was literally $3,000. So I basically couldn't see my family or my friends. I was working all the time, and in exchange for that, I got $3,000 for 365 days of work. So really wasn't a pay for performance culture. And so when it comes to your annual performance review and the amounts of raises you're getting, the bonuses, and even sometimes the stock equity refresh grants, if you don't feel like you're being paid for your performance, then I would definitely consider moving to another company where they actually will do that for you. It's okay to work hard and work long hours for a company, but if they don't reward you for it proportionally, then that is the sign of a bad workplace. Now, the second red flag that you may want to look out for is if a company tells you that they focus on work-life integration, not work-life balance. Or you may have even heard it as, we work hard, but we play even harder. Now, I used to work in management consulting, and I can tell you this is basically the motto of all of the management consulting firms. But as an industry and someone applying for a consulting job, you know that this is the industry standard, and you know that this is what you can expect. So if you hear this, just know you're going to need to make personal sacrifices and have less personal time to yourself because you will be working long hours and you will be working very hard. So as long as you are aware that this is what you're signing up for, then this is not a problem. And if you love your job, it truly can be worth it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be willing to work hard, but just be prepared so that there's no false pretenses. And also another thing I've noticed is that when a company says they work hard and they play harder, this usually means they have really fun, big organized events where sometimes you can even invite your family once or maybe twice a year. And this is so they try to make sure that you really don't mind working that hard all the time and making those types of sacrifices. And in my personal opinion, having a big party twice a year where you get some free food and free alcohol isn't necessarily always worth the amount of hours and work you put in. But just be aware of that. The third thing bad employers tell their employees is that they fire the bottom 25% of their company every single year to ensure top performance and to ensure that you are working with only the best of the best. Now, there are some companies that I shall not name where this is actually their standard HR policy. And there's a lot of controversy about whether this actually improves performance or not. But my personal opinion is that it really does not work out or benefit the company in the long run. Because if you think about it, if you know that there's a 25% chance that you are going to get fired this year, what are the chances that you are going to want to help your colleagues and teammates with projects? What's the chances that you're going to want to share ideas or go out of your way to actually help somebody besides yourself? Because remember, if you're helping someone else or someone else is taking credit for a project that you worked on, this increases the chances that you are in that bottom 25% because you are going to be compared to your peers. Another thing bad employers tell their employees, and this is usually when you're negotiating or before accepting a job offer, is if they make you promises about the future role and responsibilities and future promotions that you may get. This is usually just their negotiation tactic so that you can accept a job offer and so you don't decline it. But usually what I've seen is these are almost always false promises. I would never accept a job where they're promising you that things are going to get better in the future, or that just take a lower level role for now and we will promote you in a year. Just be very cautious of that because usually you can never get that in writing and therefore it's not legally enforceable. And most of the time what I've seen is that they just need you to be there for around a year, and then once you do what they need you to do, if you're unhappy and you leave, they'll just find somebody else. So just be very, very cautious of future promises of a role. And very similar to that, be wary if they tell you, don't worry who your manager is. You can figure that out when we get there. Or we'll tell you after you accept the job offer who your manager is. Knowing who your manager is and making sure that you and them have a really good fit and good chemistry and that they actually care about your career is going to be vital for your overall happiness and long-term career success. They say 70% of employees leave their companies not because of the company or the pay, but because of their manager. So having a great manager is going to be very, very important, and make sure you have a good one before you accept a job offer. Or if you're working at the company and your manager leaves and you get a new one, try to be a part of that interview panel because you're going to want to make sure that this manager is good, invested in your career, and genuinely cares about your career growth and success. Another red flag is if you ask if the company has former management or managerial training and they tell you that they don't. Or worse yet, they tell you that manager training is not important and they'll just figure it out or they can learn it on the job. It's a natural instinct. Like I was saying in the previous point, your manager is super important, and I feel like companies who know that will invest the time, the money, and the resources to create formal managerial training to make sure that their managers are good and that they're set up for success and that they can focus on retention. So this is a really good sign if a company does have former managerial training, and if they don't, you should be wary. Another thing bad employers tend to say is that they don't really have a solid plan yet, or they aren't really sure what is going to happen or what things are going to look like, but they're hiring and it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. So I was actually interviewing for a new job, and the head of recruiting told me that they didn't really know what their organizational structure was going to look like, or what their team was going to look like, or how many heads they actually needed to fill on their team because they're just growing really fast and they'll figure it out later. So this is a huge red flag to me because if the head of recruiting or the head of your department or even your manager doesn't really know what the long-term vision is and the strategy for your company and even what your team is supposed to look like how many team members they're going to be, where they're going to be situated, what levels they're going to be at, how many managers they're going to be, how they're going to structure the overall organization, this is just a sign that when you show up, things are going to be equally as chaotic and they don't really have an idea or a plan as to what to do. And what I've also noticed is if you accept a job like that, roles and responsibilities get mixed up and jumbled all the time, and you're going to realize that you're going to be doing a lot of work when someone may not be working at all. Or when it comes to your performance review, they won't really know how to accurately grade you and reward you for your performance because you've been doing a bunch of stuff that they didn't originally want to hire you for. Or even you don't really know what your level is and if you're being paid appropriately, because you could be operating at the higher level but being paid at the lower one because, again, they don't know their org structure. So this is just another thing that you're going to want to be cautious of. Now, lastly, if a company tells you that you should focus on the long-term growth and don't worry too much about the short-term growth, this usually refers to their pay or their compensation, and maybe even sometimes your job and leveling status within a certain company. You should be very cautious of this because if they're telling you, don't worry about what we're paying you right now, focus on the long term. This usually is very common with pre-IPO companies before they go public, or with the promise that they will go public in 1 to 2 to 3 different years. So just be very cautious of this because usually this is their way of negotiating and trying to make you feel better about taking a lower job offer or a lower pay because they're going to, again, make future promises that things will work out in the long run or that we're going to double our stock in the next 2 years, so don't worry about it. I think you should have that appropriate balance between good short-term pay and compensation and leveling and long-term growth as well. And all the really good major companies with long-term track records and success know this as well. Now, there are occasions where this is true, where you can join a pre-IPO company and you will have fantastic long-term growth and wealth, but you should be able to calculate that risk and know what you are signing up for. And just be very, very cautious of that as well for future long-term growth, which is always a really cute buzzword that a lot of companies tend to use. All right, so now you have 8 signs of a potential toxic workplace, or 8 signs or 8 things that bad employers do tell their employees. And if you want more career advice just like this, don't forget to click subscribe. And I always want to know what other videos you want us to make. So comment down below because I want to be as helpful for you as possible. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.